The RMS Titanic, the largest and most luxurious passenger ship ever built, made its long-awaited debut from the bustling shipyards of Belfast in April 1912. Constructed by Harland and Wolff under the oversight of the White Star Line, the vessel was the epitome of Gilded Age opulence and engineering prowess. At nearly 883 feet long and weighing over 46,000 tons, the Titanic was a floating palace designed to cater to the elite of the time. Its construction was a monumental achievement, with a workforce of thousands laboring for more than 2 years to bring the ship to life. The Titanic's grandeur was not merely in its size, but also in its luxurious interior, featuring lavish first-class accommodations, grand promenades, and state-of-the-art amenities, making it the most sought-after ocean liner of its time. The Roaring Twenties, often associated with the 1920s, were still a decade away when the Titanic set sail, but the spirit of progress and innovation that defined the era was already taking shape. The early 20th century was a time of rapid industrialization, technological advancement, and growing global connectivity. The Titanic embodied this spirit, symbolizing both the optimism of the age and the growing power of the industrial world. Its maiden voyage was intended to be a triumph of human ingenuity, showcasing the best of maritime engineering and social progress. Among the elite who traveled aboard the Titanic, many viewed the ship as a testament to modernity, a symbol of a world where technological advancement could conquer even the vast and treacherous Atlantic Ocean. With such grand expectations, the Titanic was set to make history, unaware of the tragedy that awaited it just days into its journey. A monument of steel, the construction of the Titanic. The construction of the RMS Titanic was a colossal undertaking, reflecting the technological ambitions of the early 20th century. Built at the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, Ireland, the ship embodied the cutting-edge engineering of its time, utilizing a combination of reinforced steel and meticulous craftsmanship to create a vessel of unprecedented strength and elegance. The shipyard, already renowned for constructing some of the world's most formidable vessels, dedicated a slipway and workforce to the Titanic project, ensuring that every detail met the highest standards of maritime innovation. With over 3,000 workers involved in its construction, the Titanic's creation was a feat of industrial collaboration, drawing together shipbuilders, engineers, and craftsmen from across Ireland and beyond. The Titanic belonged to the Olympic class of ocean liners, a series of ships designed to provide unparalleled luxury and safety while maintaining the efficiency of transatlantic travel. The Olympic-class trio, Olympic, Titanic, and Britannic, were among the largest and most advanced cruise ships of their era, incorporating innovations such as electric lighting, onboard swimming pools, and state-of-the-art navigation systems. The Titanic, in particular, was engineered to be the pinnacle of these advancements, featuring a reinforced hull designed to withstand the pressures of the open ocean. Engineers at Harland and Wolff meticulously crafted the ship's 46,000-ton steel structure, using a combination of riveted and plating techniques to ensure its integrity. The ship's design included a watertight compartment system, with 16 bulkheads dividing the hull into watertight sections. This feature was intended to make the Titanic practically unsinkable, as even a significant breach in the hull would not result in catastrophic flooding. Beyond its engineering marvels, the Titanic was outfitted with the most luxurious accommodations ever seen on a transatlantic liner. The ship was divided into 3 distinct passenger classes, each offering a unique experience tailored to the traveler's social standing. First-class passengers were greeted with opulent staterooms, a grand dining saloon offering gourmet cuisine, and even a Turkish bath and squash court, making the RMS Titanic one of the most lavish floating palaces of the age. In contrast, second-class accommodations, while more modest, still exceeded the standards of most contemporary cruise ships, offering spacious lounges and private cabins for families and middle-class travelers. The third-class section, designed with the ambition of providing dignified passage for immigrants across the Atlantic, featured communal bedrooms and dining halls, but still reflected the White Star Line's commitment to improving the travel experience for all passengers. One of the most significant technological advancements incorporated into the Titanic was its advanced communication system. The ship was equipped with a state-of-the-art Marconi wireless telegraph, allowing it to send and receive messages from other vessels in the Atlantic. This system provided an unprecedented level of connectivity, enabling passengers to stay in touch with loved ones and ship operators to receive weather and navigational updates. The Titanic's wireless operators were among the most skilled in the maritime world, trained to manage long-distance transmissions with precision. As the final stages of construction neared completion, the Titanic was fitted with over 300 watertight doors and a complex system of watertight compartments designed to prevent the vessel from sinking in the event of a major accident. Engineers also ensured that the ship remained stable in rough seas by incorporating a massive double bottom to provide additional protection against underwater damage. These innovations reflected the confidence of the era's engineers, who believed that the Titanic represented the pinnacle of maritime safety and sophistication. The ship's grandeur was further enhanced by the use of electric lighting, replacing the gas lamps commonly used in early 20th century vessels and allowing for a more elegant and efficient interior illumination. With its construction complete in early 1912, the Titanic stood as a testament to the industrial and technological capabilities of the age. As the finishing touches were made by the Harland and Wolff workforce, the ship was prepared for its inaugural voyage, destined to be the most famous and luxurious ocean liner the world had ever seen. The crew of the Titanic, professionalism amid anticipation. As the RMS Titanic neared the completion of its final preparations, its crew of nearly 900 individuals meticulously worked to ensure that every aspect of the ship was ready for its maiden voyage. The staff, a diverse group of skilled professionals and dedicated support workers, played a crucial role in the ship's operations, from its engine rooms to the grand dining saloon. From the moment of its launch in May 1911, the Titanic had required a vast and highly trained workforce to maintain its luxurious amenities and ensure the safety and comfort of its passengers. Now, as the vessel prepared to make its historic journey across the Atlantic, every member of the crew was acutely aware of the prestige associated with serving aboard the most advanced and elaborate ocean liner of its time. The Titanic's crew was divided into several departments, each responsible for the smooth functioning of the ship. The engineering staff, consisting of engineers, firemen, and trimmers, was tasked with maintaining the ship's complex power plant, which harnessed the energy of coal-fired boilers to drive the ship's steam turbines. The engine room, a critical heart of the vessel, was staffed around the clock by highly trained professionals who worked tirelessly to ensure the seamless operation of the Titanic's propulsion system. The deck department, led by the ship's captain and a team of officers, was responsible for navigation, maintaining the ship's course, and overseeing safety protocols during the voyage. The deck officers, including the first officer, second officer, and quartermen, were trained in celestial navigation and the operation of the ship's state-of-the-art radio equipment, which played a vital role in long-distance communication. In addition to the technical and navigational aspects, the ship relied heavily on its service staff to maintain the opulence for which the Titanic was famed. Stewards and stewardesses, many of whom had been trained in luxury hotels, were responsible for ensuring the comfort of first-class passengers, from serving meals in the grand dining saloon to maintaining the ship's elegant interiors. The staff in the second and third-class accommodations worked to uphold the distinctions of social class aboard the ship, managing dining areas and recreational spaces for their respective passengers. The ship's wireless operators, stationed in the Marconi room, were among the most highly skilled individuals aboard, responsible for sending and receiving messages across the vast expanse of the Atlantic. The crew's preparation for the Titanic's maiden voyage was marked by a blend of professionalism and an undercurrent of excitement. As they rehearsed their duties and ensured that every system was functioning correctly, many of the crew members were filled with a sense of pride for serving aboard what they believed to be the most advanced and luxurious ship ever built. Some, particularly those who had worked on the Titanic sister ship the Olympic, recognized the differences and improvements that had been made, further boosting their confidence in the vessel's capabilities. For others, particularly the younger and less experienced crew members, this was their first major voyage, and the anticipation was palpable. With the final checks completed and the ship primed for departure, the Titanic's crew stood ready for the journey ahead. Though many were aware of the responsibility they bore in ensuring the safety and satisfaction of the passengers, few could have anticipated the fate that awaited them just days into the voyage. As the Titanic departed from Belfast and made its way to Southampton for its full passenger embarkation, the crew carried with them the hopes and expectations of the world, unaware that their professionalism would soon be tested in unimaginable ways. Aboard the Titanic, a diverse array of passengers. As the RMS Titanic prepared to set sail from Southampton on its maiden voyage to New York, its decks were filled with a diverse and intriguing cross-section of humanity. Among the 2,224 passengers aboard were wealthy industrialists, aristocrats, emigrants, and even a contingent of journalists keen to chronicle the voyage. Although the ship was divided into 3 distinct classes, each offering a different experience, the Titanic was, at its core, a microcosm of the broader societal dynamics of the early 20th century. From the sumptuous first-class accommodations to the more modest second-class lounges, and the purpose-built third-class compartments for emigrants, each passenger had their own unique reason for embarking on this historic journey. For the first-class passengers, the Titanic represented the ultimate symbol of status and sophistication. Among them was John Jacob Astor IV, the wealthiest man in America and owner of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York. His presence alone was enough to elevate the Titanic's social profile, as he was joined by a host of other elite travelers, including Benjamin Guggenheim, a prominent financier, and the Honorable Charles Hayes, a Canadian railway magnate. These individuals were not only wealthy but also part of the Gilded Age's elite, a time when industrial fortunes were being amassed at an unprecedented rate, and transatlantic voyages had become a frequent, if expensive, occurrence. For many of them, the Titanic was a means of conducting business and socializing across the Atlantic, with grand dinner parties and elaborate social gatherings expected to fill the ship's gilded halls. Second-class passengers, often middle-class professionals or those of rising economic status, also sought the comforts of the Atlantic crossing, albeit with fewer luxuries. Among them was Madeline Astor, the 19-year-old daughter of John Jacob Astor, who was traveling with her father and young son. For Madeline and other second-class passengers, the voyage represented both an exciting journey and a chance to participate in the grandeur of transcontinental travel without the full expense of first-class accommodations. Their staterooms, though not as lavish as those in the first-class section, still afforded them a level of comfort that few had ever experienced. The third-class passengers, by far the largest demographic aboard, were immigrants seeking new opportunities in the United States. Many hailed from Ireland, Scandinavia, Italy, and Eastern Europe, drawn by the promise of a better life across the ocean. Unlike the first and second classes, their accommodations were more communal, with shared sleeping quarters and dining halls designed to accommodate large numbers of passengers efficiently. Among them was Ida Strauss, the wife of Isidor Strauss, co-owner of Macy's Herald Square, who had chosen to travel in third class after being reminded of the inequality of first class and third class treatment aboard the ship. For these passengers, the Titanic represented more than just a luxurious cruise. It was an opportunity for a new beginning, a chance to escape the hardships of their home countries and forge a better future in the new world. Though the passengers hailed from different social strata, many shared the belief that the Titanic was a marvel of modern engineering and a symbol of safety and progress. As the ship departed from Southampton, the anticipation among the passengers was palpable. Some recorded their experiences in diaries, while others simply absorbed the grandeur of their surroundings, basking in the excitement of the journey ahead. For many, the Titanic was not just a vessel. It was a symbol of their aspirations, a floating promise of the future. The voyage begins, departure and the Atlantic's vast realm. As the RMS Titanic departed from Southampton on April 10, 1912, the anticipation and excitement aboard were palpable. After a final check of the ship systems, Captain Edward Smith, a seasoned veteran of the sea, led the vessel from the bustling port with a crew of over 900, each ready for their part in what was expected to be a historic journey. The ship's departure was marked by the sound of ship horns echoing against the harbor walls, as both the crew and passengers reveled in the beginning of their transatlantic adventure. From a distance, the Titanic appeared as a grand behemoth, its white promenade decks glistening in the morning sun, and its towering smokestacks casting long shadows across the water. The first few days of the journey were uneventful, as the Titanic smoothly made its way through the English Channel and into the open Atlantic. The calm seas allowed passengers to fully experience the ship's lavish amenities, from the grand dining saloon to the opulent first-class lounges. For the elite of Europe and America, the journey was a luxurious escape, a chance to mingle in the company of fellow first-class travelers and indulge in the Titanic's extravagant offerings. Among the many who had boarded in Southampton, such as John Jacob Astorth IV and his young family, the crossing was a social affair, filled with elaborate dinners, dancing, and the promise of refinement. Meanwhile, the crew worked tirelessly to maintain the ship's operations. The engine rooms, staffed around the clock, ensured that the Titanic's immense power plant ran with efficiency. Engineers and stokers fed coal into the boilers, their tasks essential to the ship's propulsion and the generation of the electricity that powered its many conveniences. The deck officers, led by Captain Smith, monitored the ship's progress and ensured that navigation remained on course. The Titanic was sailing westward at a steady speed, the wind filling the sails of the ship just as it had done for centuries before steam power replaced the masts of wooden vessels. However, as the Titanic ventured farther into the Atlantic, reports of ice in the North Atlantic began to reach the ship. Wireless operators received messages from other vessels warning of large icebergs in the area, a common but manageable hazard during the peak of spring when icebergs calved from the Labrador coast. Despite these reports, many on board dismissed the warnings as routine. Captain Smith and his officers, confident in the ship's watertight compartments and its reinforced hull, considered the risk of a collision to be minimal. The Titanic was equipped with the most advanced technologies of its time, and its crew had been trained to handle any potential threats to the voyage. As the days passed, the passengers on the Titanic continued to enjoy their journey, blissfully unaware of the growing danger that lay ahead. The Titanic's journey had begun with promise and prosperity, a symbol of progress and an emblem of the technological advancements of the era. But the vast expanse of the Atlantic, while beautiful and serene, concealed a perilous obstacle that would soon challenge the greatest ship the world had ever seen. The fateful night, collision with the iceberg. On the night of April 14, 1912, the RMS Titanic sliced through the dark waters of the North Atlantic, its crew confident in its structural integrity and its ability to navigate the open ocean. As the ship moved westward, the temperature had dropped to just above freezing, and the waters stretched endlessly in every direction. The Titanic was sailing at approximately 21 knots, slightly faster than its scheduled speed, a decision made by Captain Smith in response to pressure to arrive in New York ahead of its sister ship, the Olympic. The ship's fourth officer, Joseph Boxhall, had previously advised against such a speed, warning that the presence of ice in the area made slower navigation a safer option. However, with confidence in the Titanic's watertight compartments and reinforced hull, the decision was made to maintain the faster pace. By around 11 p.m., the Titanic's lookouts in the Crow's Nest, Fred Fleet and Reginald Lee, reported a large object in the distance. Using the ship's powerful binoculars, the two could see what appeared to be a massive dark shape rising from the sea. Initially, the lookout, Fred Fleet, was uncertain of the exact nature of the object, whether it was a drifting spar, a cluster of floating ice, or the unmistakable menace of an iceberg. Fleet sounded the warning bell in the Crow's Nest just a few precious seconds before the Titanic's lights would have revealed the full extent of the danger. The ship's nearest telegrapher, Lee, sent the message down to the bridge, where the telegraph officer hastily passed it on to the ship's officers below. At the helm of the ship, the Titanic's sixth officer, James Moody, reacted instantly to the warning. On receiving the message that a large object had been sighted ahead, Moody struck the emergency bell in the pilot house, signaling to the ship's quartermen that an avoidance maneuver was necessary. The bridge, now in a state of controlled urgency, issued the command to hard to port, steering the ship sharply to the left in a last-minute attempt to avoid the iceberg. At the same time, the ship's engineer, Thomas Andrews, was alerted, and the order was sent to the engine room to stop the Titanic's engines. The iceberg, though partially submerged, extended an estimated 60 feet above the surface and more than twice that beneath the ocean's surface. As the Titanic attempted to turn, its immense inertia delayed the maneuver, and the ship's starboard side struck the iceberg at approximately 11:40 p.m. The collision was not a direct hit, but rather a glancing blow, as the Titanic's reinforced hull scraped along the side of the iceberg. The impact was not immediately apparent through the ship's main deck, but within seconds, a deep, ominous groan reverberated through the Titanic, signaling a structural breach. Looking down at the ship's hull from the bridge, some of the officers could see the distinct glimmering of light where water had begun to seep into the interior. The realization that the Titanic had struck an iceberg spread rapidly among the crew. Engineers in the boiler rooms scrambled to assess the damage, and the first indication of the severity came when floodlights were extinguished in the forward compartments. The ship's chief designer, Thomas Andrews, quickly confirmed the worst. The Titanic had sustained a catastrophic breach. The watertight compartments, designed to keep the ship afloat even in the event of a collision, were now filling with water at an alarming rate. The Titanic, long presumed to be unsinkable, was in serious danger. Within minutes, Captain Smith gathered his senior officers in the first-class lounge. The room, filled with smoke and the low murmur of conversation, now served as an emergency command center as the officers assessed the situation. It was swiftly decided that the entire complement of lifeboats needed to be launched, but as the Titanic's lifeboat capacity was woefully inadequate for the number of people on board, panic was beginning to spread among the passengers. The ship's officers, trained in emergency procedures, moved quickly to organize the evacuation, issuing instructions to the crew and passengers alike. The first lifeboats were lowered into the icy waters, and passenger classes were separated, with women and children being given priority to board. The crew, under strict orders, worked to ensure that the evacuation was carried out as efficiently as possible, while the remaining passengers on the ship attempted to remain calm. Despite the horror of the situation, the Titanic's crew, many of whom had served on the Olympic, followed established protocols with a grim determination. As the Titanic's decks filled with the sound of hurried footsteps and the cries of distressed passengers, the ship's lights remained on, and the grandeur of the vessel continued to be a source of awe. The Titanic, once a symbol of progress and human ingenuity, was now on the precipice of disaster. The final hours, the sinking and the aftermath. With the Titanic's starboard side riddled with a long gash that allowed seawater to flood multiple compartments, the ship's descent into the ocean was inevitable. The vessel, designed to withstand up to 4 breach compartments, was now taking in water at an alarming rate, and by 12:05 a.m. on April 15, 1912, the first distress rocket was fired into the sky, a red flare that signaled the imminent danger facing the ship. Word had spread quickly among the passengers, and the final hours of the Titanic became a race against time as the ship's crew and officers worked desperately to evacuate those aboard. Order and chaos coexisted in the chaos. Lifeboats, of which the Titanic carried only 20, enough for barely half of the passengers and crew, were being lowered into the icy water. Panic quickly set in as the reality of their limited capacity became apparent. Passengers, many of them reluctant to leave the safety of the ship, hesitated to board the boats, while others rushed to their lifebelts and waited for their turn. The crew, under strict orders from Captain Smith, enforced the women and children first policy, ensuring that women and children were loaded into the lifeboats before men. However, these protocols were not universally followed, and many first-class passengers managed to secure a place in the lifeboats ahead of those in lower classes. As the first lifeboats were launched, the sea, calm moments before, now became a frozen, merciless expanse. The temperature was below freezing, and the water was so cold that anyone who fell into it would not have survived for more than a few minutes. The lifeboats, though large and sturdy, seemed to vanish against the vastness of the Atlantic. Many of the remaining passengers, realizing the hopelessness of their situation, turned to prayer, music, and even card games in an effort to distract themselves from the growing terror. Passengers on the upper decks could see the ship's lights flickering as the power failed in some areas, and strange noises, cascading water, scraping metal, and the deep groans of the ship's structure filled the night air. As the Titanic continued to tilt forward, its bow rising higher with each passing minute, the last lifeboats were launched. The ship's band, determined to preserve morale, continued to play on the deck until the last moments. Music, a final act of defiance against despair, echoed across the vessel as it prepared to meet the ocean head-on. Some passengers, including the first officer, were seen comforting others, while others desperately tried to find family members among the chaos. By approximately 2:10 a.m., the Titanic's forward section was fully submerged, and the ship's bow began to rise at an angle that made it appear as though it were being lifted into the sky. The stern, which had remained relatively intact, was now completely out of the water, towering over the dark sea before it also gave way. At around 2:20 a.m., the Titanic finally split apart and plunged into the depths of the Atlantic, its final moments marked by a deafening roar and the sound of metal tearing. The once mighty ship was gone, leaving behind only the lifeboats, the sea, and the few hundred survivors who had managed to escape before it disappeared into the abyss. The aftermath of the sinking was as harrowing as the disaster itself. The surviving passengers, many of whom were crammed into the lifeboats, waited endlessly for a rescue that seemed unlikely, the freezing air sapping their strength with each passing hour. The nearest ship, the RMS Carpathia, had responded to the Titanic's distress calls, but was still over 50 miles away. As the sun began to rise on April 15th, the distant silhouette of the Carpathia appeared on the horizon, a lifeline for those who had survived the night. The lifeboats were signaled to turn toward the ship at 4:10 a.m., and as the hours passed, the exhausted survivors were lifted aboard, many still in their lifebelts and shivering from the cold. The survivors, now numbering just over 700, were met with stunned silence as they recounted the events of the night before. Some were in shock, others in disbelief, and many were simply too cold and weak to speak. The disaster had claimed over 1,500 lives, and the Titanic, once a symbol of human achievement, had now become the site of one of the greatest maritime tragedies in history. Reflections on the Titanic disaster, a lasting legacy. The sinking of the RMS Titanic sent shockwaves across the world, fundamentally altering the way maritime safety was perceived and implemented. At the time, the disaster was unprecedented in scale, not only because of the number of lives lost, but because it shattered the illusion of technological invulnerability that had been so strongly associated with the ship. Although the Titanic had been engineered with the most advanced safety measures of the era, its shortcomings, particularly the lack of sufficient lifeboats and inadequate emergency protocols, became glaringly evident in the aftermath. The tragedy exposed the vast disparities in how passengers were treated in crisis and revealed that even the most luxurious and well-designed vessel could be vulnerable when human error, misjudgment, and an overconfidence in technology were allowed to override caution. The immediate consequences of the disaster were profound. In the days and weeks that followed the sinking, frantic efforts were made to locate bodies and recover lifeboats scattered across the Atlantic. Survivors, many of whom carried deep emotional scars, were interviewed by press and government officials, their testimonies forming the foundation of the subsequent inquiries into the disaster. These inquiries, held in both the United States and the United Kingdom, scrutinized the Titanic's construction, its navigational decisions, and the response of the White Star Line and the crew. The findings of these investigations led to sweeping changes in maritime safety regulations, ensuring that such a tragedy would be less likely to occur in the future. One of the most significant reforms to emerge from the disaster was the reevaluation of lifeboat requirements. The Titanic had been built with 20 lifeboats, which was considered adequate under the existing standards at the time. However, it was revealed that these lifeboats could only accommodate around half the number of passengers and crew. As a result, the new international maritime regulations mandated that ships must be equipped with enough lifeboats to account for every person aboard. Additionally, the necessity of lifeboat drills and regular emergency training became a standard practice, ensuring that in the event of a disaster, those on board would be more prepared to respond appropriately. Beyond the physical safety improvements, the Titanic disaster also prompted a shift in how the maritime industry approached risk. The tragedy occurred during a time when the belief in technological superiority often overshadowed the importance of caution and contingency planning. The disaster served as a stark reminder that even the most advanced designs could be compromised by human error, from the decision to maintain high speed in icy waters to the failure to distribute distress signals effectively. As a result, maritime organizations began to emphasize a more comprehensive approach to safety, one that combined technological advancements with rigorous protocols and clear communication. The cultural memory of the Titanic disaster has remained deeply embedded in the public consciousness, shaping the way people perceive both maritime history and the potential consequences of overconfidence in technology. The wreck of the Titanic, resting in the depths of the Atlantic since its sinking, has become an enduring symbol of both human achievement and human failure. Expeditions to the wreck site, such as the famous 1985 discovery by Robert Ballard, have allowed the world to peer into the remnants of the ill-fated ship, reinforcing the historical impact of the event. The disaster has also inspired countless books, films, and documentaries, each highlighting a different aspect of the tragedy and its broader implications. Perhaps most significantly, the Titanic disaster served as a catalyst for change in the global maritime industry. The reforms that followed, such as the establishment of the Safety of Life at Sea Treaty in 1914, which set international standards for ship safety, ensured that vessels would be better prepared to respond to emergencies. The Titanic's tragic story reminds us that while technological progress is vital, it must always be guided by responsibility, vigilance, and an understanding of the limitations of human ingenuity. The legacy of the Titanic, therefore, is not solely one of catastrophe, but also one of learning, reflection, and the enduring pursuit of safer and more accountable maritime practices. A historic journey and lasting lessons. The maiden voyage of the RMS Titanic, though tragically cut short, remains one of the most significant events in maritime history. As the world's largest and most advanced ship of its time, the Titanic was a symbol of human ambition and technological progress. Its construction represented the pinnacle of early 20th century engineering, while its opulence embodied the social and economic stratifications of an era defined by industrial growth and class divisions. The disaster that ended its journey was not merely a maritime tragedy. It was a profound turning point that reshaped global safety protocols, influenced public perception of technological invulnerability, and became a lasting part of cultural memory. The lessons learned from the Titanic's sinking continue to resonate, shaping the way ships are built, operated, and regulated in the modern era. In the immediate aftermath of the disaster, international maritime authorities swiftly implemented reforms that prioritized the safety of not just the vessel, but the lives of those aboard. The adoption of the Safety of Life at Sea Treaty in 1914 marked a significant step in establishing standardized safety requirements that would become the foundation of maritime law for decades to come. The disaster also brought public scrutiny to the responsibilities of ship operators, emphasizing that no vessel, regardless of its size or prestige, could afford to overlook basic safety measures. These changes ensured that future expeditions across the world's oceans would be guided by a more rigorous and human-centered approach to safety. Beyond its direct impact on maritime law, the Titanic disaster became an enduring narrative of human ambition and hubris. The belief in technological infallibility that had been so closely tied to the Titanic's construction was ultimately challenged by the very event that led to its demise. The tragedy served as a stark reminder that even the most advanced engineering and the most luxurious craftsmanship could not override the fundamental dangers of the sea. It also underscored the importance of preparedness, communication, and coordination, elements that are as critical today as they were a century ago. The Titanic's legacy continues to influence modern maritime operations, from the rigorous safety drills conducted before every voyage to the development of advanced navigation systems that enhance situational awareness in dangerous waters. The tragedy also inspired advancements in wireless communication technology, ensuring that ships could maintain constant contact with land and other vessels, even in the most remote oceanic regions. The Titanic's wreck, resting nearly 2 miles below the surface of the Atlantic, remains a silent but powerful testament to the intersection of human achievement and the unpredictable forces of nature. A century after its tragic sinking, the Titanic endures not only as a historical event, but as a cultural icon that continues to shape the way we understand risk, responsibility, and the limits of human mastery over the elements. Its story, told through survivor accounts, maritime records, and the countless interpretations in literature and film, serves as both a cautionary tale and a tribute to the resilience of those who survived. The Titanic's maiden voyage, though brief, altered the course of maritime history and left an indelible mark on the collective human consciousness.